What's going on, guys? So this is going to be a follow-on from our last tutorial where we learnt how to save a custom paper size template. So let's have a quick look at this template and make some adjustments as needed in case you want to save a completely custom template of your own choosing. Down here, obviously we chose a traditional template, so it's very, very basic and minimal. We've got a project title, a logo, and the date and whatnot here. So I can actually change this, and if I just select it, you'll notice these little navigation points come up, and I can kind of change the shape of it accordingly. So that's actually changing the text box. All right, so if I double click on that, we now got a project title highlighted, and we can now call this example project and by author or something like that. I've got a logo here. I don't have a logo, so I can select that using the same selection tools as Sketchup, and I can delete that off. Now, if I want to replace that with something else, like say a big title or a heading or something, I've got a text tool up in here. Okay, so we can select our text tool and we can click and drag out, and it will create a new text box. Notice how it wants to snap to edges and corners, edges and vertices. So we're going to let that, and now we've got our overall text here as well. If we want to change our text, over on our side stack over here, we've got text style. Okay, and this is going to open up a whole heap of family of texts, and we can change our font sizes and whatever here as well. So we're just going to call this project example 001. Okay, and obviously if you guys want to make it underline or bold or strike through or whatever, it's up to you guys, and center it as well. Right, so we should all be familiar with text tools, so I'm not going to spend too long on that. The other thing you might want to do is create a few additional pockets. So if we move this text box out the way, you can see that there's these lines here as well. So if we want to create an additional line, basically we want to come up to our line tool, come in through, again, notice how it's snapping, and we can just simply draw a line. Alright, notice how it wants to kind of draw out a box when we're doing that, and that's fine, but I'm just going to hit escape, alright, and delete that off. Alright, so by hitting escape, when we come up to this pencil tool, it stops the chain of line, and we can kind of sort it out as needed. We can then kind of click and drag this up, and notice how it'll snap into the previous existing line as well. So if I drag it up and I want it to actually snap to this particular line, I can click it and it'll just snap in there beautifully. Like, if I want to change this as well, the kind of line style, we can click on this line, and notice how at the moment it's a little bit bolder than this previous line. We can click it, and up here in shape style, we can obviously come down into here, change our fill, our stroke and whatnot. So at the moment we want to drop the stroke back to a 0.2. I think I changed it to a 0.2. Yeah, 0.2 there. Right, and obviously we can change it to a dashed as well, and we can make a series of adjustments to lines up here in this shape style. If we were to create a full kind of shape, for now let's create a triangle. Alright, we got our triangle there. If we wanted to change our fill color, obviously we come up into fill and we can kind of color it as needed. Alright, and that didn't work, so let's just select it first. Alright, come up into our fill, alright, and now we can kind of change our colors as needed. So I'm just going to delete that off, but one quick thing before I do, notice here too that you've got this little symbol here in the center. So anything that you want to rotate, grab this kind of center symbol, right, and you can kind of click and drag things around, and notice where your mouse cursor is, it'll kind of give you a degrees there as well. Okay, and obviously you've got the drag angles again, so we can kind of drag it out as needed. Alright, we're going to delete that, and we're going to kind of suppress our colors here, and we're going to put our fill back to a white, collapse our colors and our shape styles, because obviously we've now been through that. And let's have a quick look at how to import our SketchUp model into our SketchUp layout. So what we want to do is go back into our SketchUp file, and there's a couple different ways of doing this. Essentially, we're going to use the scenes that we created, all right, in previous video, as a guide point for SketchUp layout or Trimble layout. So what we can do here is going up the top here, we've got this layout option, and this will send it to our layout in the current view that we've got currently selected. So at the moment, let's create a new scene, and I just want this a simple isometric. So I can grab my two section boxes here, and I can hide them, or I could just come up to view and turn off my section planes, just nice and simply. Now I'm going to create a new scene, add a scene over here, and if you guys aren't familiar with this, obviously go back into the previous videos, and we're just going to call this isometric. Alright, so now we've got a floor plan. Alright, we got a longitudinal section, and we have an isometric there as well. Okay, now now that all our scenes are kind of set up correctly, we can kind of go into our layout. Alright, it says your model must be saved, so obviously I haven't saved this model before, so we're just going to save it quickly now. Alright, and it's asking me to choose a template. So again, I'm going to come through and I'm going to place this on an A3 portrait template. Alright, if you guys have created your A2 or your custom template, feel free to use that. Alright, that's going to boot up, and notice here too with our UI, it's now created a new document, right? And it's actually telling us that we're on the inside page at the moment, and the exact same view that we were kind of looking at in Sketchup has now been imported into layout. So we now have an isometric here, and if we click it, notice how we've now got these anchor points, and we can click and drag out, and we can kind of change how much room our viewport is taking up. Now, one very, very important thing is that over here on our right hand side we have this SketchUp model. So this is very important because over here this is what references our SketchUp files. So at the moment you can see here that our scene selected is isometric, but if we drop down, we've got last saved SketchUp, floor plan, sectional, longitudinal, and isometric. These three here are all scenes I created previously in SketchUp layout. In SketchUp. So if I select the floor plan, you'll notice my viewport will load up and change accordingly. And then I can click and drag this out and change the size of it. Okay, now you'll notice that as I'm doing that, right, I have here a current scale. And at the moment, the current scale is set at some weird number, 1/34 or something, right? And for a floor plan, I might want that at a 1 to 100. So I can come down here and I can find my 1 to 100 here. Right? And there's my 1 to 100 on an A3 sheet. Now, if I grab these anchor points, because at the moment our viewport is so much larger than the actual image, we can resize our viewport. But you'll notice here that it's going to come up an issue. So as I'm dragging out, oh, it's not. Okay, that's because over here, I've got preserve scale on, which is what I want to happen. So I'll just turn that off just for this example. And you'll notice as I drag out my viewport to resize, it'll scale the model with it. And you'll notice over here on the right hand side, our model or our scale is changing as well. So what you want to do is you actually want to select 1 to 100 over on the right hand side from our side stack. All right, click on that preserve scale, right, which it does automatically once we select that. And now we can resize our viewport. Right, and we can kind of drag and move that up. Alright, so we now have this view kind of sorted, and we're going to change this just back to our isometric for the time being, and then we're going to put our couple floor plans underneath. So we've got our isometric here. We're going to turn off this preserve scale so that we can kind of drag it up and make it bigger. Right, and you can see there that we've kind of got our viewport roughly half the page, but that hasn't scaled up too much. So we can come down here into our scales and we can go maybe a 1 to 20, all right, which is now too big. All right, so let's go 1 to 50. That looks a little bit better and gives us enough room for our annotations later on. And now what we can do is Control C, Control V, and create a new template down in here. Oh, sorry, not Control C and Control V. We're just going to hold down Control and we're going to drag out a new viewport. Alright, you notice there that it's too big, so we're going to scale this down. Alright, and we're then going to come over again to our SketchUp model and change our scene here on the right hand side to floor plan. It's changed to a floor plan here. Alright, and we want it a 1 to 100. Well, let's go 1 to 50 because I think it's only pretty small. Right, preserve scale, that's correct. And you'll notice it's cutting off half of our model. So what we want is make sure that this here is ticked and that will enable us to kind of rescale the viewport without changing the scale of our overall project. So now that we've got this rescaled very quickly, all right, we can now then drag that into a position we like. Then holding down Control again, we can then Control and click and drag out. All right, and we've now got an additional viewport, and we can then change this one to our sectional longitudinal. All right, again, having that preserved scale on, it allows us to then drag out our viewport a little bit additionally. Right, to ensure that we have our entire kind of view kind of there. And obviously if you've got a couple different sections, you can then Control click this out and put in an additional section as well. Alright, so we're going to leave that tutorial here, and we're going to cover a little bit more like dimensioning and whatnot in our next video. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys over there.